Hello, hello. How's everybody doing today?
Great,
Jim and John.
doing great.
Hey, good to see you guys. Haven't seen you in a while. How are things in Atlanta?
Oh man, everything is it's blistering cold right now and windy. How about Shreveport?
Probably not blistering. I haven't blistered yet, but it's cold for Shreveport.
Yeah,
Right
cold
now.
and sunny. Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, this is Allendale Strong Podcast with John Perkins and our guest today, Kim Mitchell, Community Renewal. Thank you for coming with us on this podcast. And they're going to see you a lot, but thank you for coming and talk to us today.
Glad to be here, Roosevelt, and so thankful for you and John and how y'all are working together. It's just a wonderful benefit to all who are listening.
Well, this is to help get out the word about Allendale Strong and get out the word about the things that you've done and things that Dorothy's done and everybody else and things that we're going to do in the future. And I'm going to go ahead and start off with asking you, Mr. Mitchell, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about your history with Allendale Strong.
All right. Well, I've been an architect and a city planner for about 40 years. And then in 2014, I retired from practice to join Community Renewal International as their director for the Center and Institute for Community Renewal. And I'll have to tell you, I had a wonderfully full career as an architect, and that architecture interest and a passion I have for community and design for a community, coupled with a background I have in sociology, and helped me lead our firm into doing city planning and actually being recognized and doing some really good things in terms of urban design, community planning, new innovations in city planning and zoning. And but that was all preparation for me to join Community Renewal. And that I began to see in my professional career, because I connected with Community Renewal around the year 2000 and started processing what that was about. And I began to see, well, this is pretty cool. Community Renewal's model gives me a way to think holistically about the city. And I really think that it could represent a fundamental shift in the way that we plan and design cities. And so a number of things happened. I developed for Community Renewal what's called a think tank charrette to try to connect it to other innovators, and that was cool, and a few other things. And then lo and behold, I get a chance to test that idea of Community Renewal as a framework for a change in city planning. That and another discipline I'm involved in with a friend, innovator, Ed Morrison, around strategic doing. And so the test case for that was in Allendale. And so, that just kind of a personally wonderful story to look back and say, well, I've had blessings to connect to some real innovations that have grown me as a professional, hopefully grown me as a person. I guess there's some that would debate that, but anyway, when I joined Community Renewal in 2014, I looked back on those 40 years of practice and my education and thought, man, this was all preparation to do what I'm about to do. And so that was, it's a full career. It's a lot to talk about, but that's probably enough right now, because what's happened since 2014 has been some of the most fulfilling, most challenging. I told a friend in Washington, D.C. that, I've gained a comfort with walking into uncertainty. And he looked at me, he's an author, and he looked at me like, you got to be kidding. I can't do that. And I thought, well, that there's something about considering relationships as such a strong part of society. One of Community Renewal's principles is that society is a system of relationships, and that's foundational. And what I've learned is that we can have an influence on the nature of those relationships that are foundational to community and to society. And if we make that foundation through intention about caring for one another, that's a different path than what our current nature of a relational foundation is, which people may not like hearing this, but there's some analysis that says the current nature of our system of relationships is one of greed and envy. And that what that produces is polarized thinking, loneliness, mistrust, all sorts of things that if you look around at the condition of our community and others, you can see, well, maybe there's something to that idea of the nature of the relationships being key to what a society and a community produce. So I've learned through, largely through Allendale Strong, an even deeper commitment to the key and just the importance of connecting people across all lines of difference, but connecting them not in their differences, but in what they share in common, and that is their capacity to care for one another. And if that becomes a priority, I can argue with anybody to agreement, not to win. And right now we live in a world where it's about arguing to win. And I feel like that's one of the challenges that we face in this Allendale Strong issue of the freeway. And we struggle to be heard from the residents of Allendale. And if we could be heard, you've got a group here who knows how to argue to agreement. And a lot of that is based upon when you encounter uncertainty, let's learn together because there's an opportunity hiding there somewhere. And I feel like we are doing that in Allendale. I love saying this, but I truly believe that the prosperous, equitable future of Shreveport is emerging from Allendale. It's not emerging from the wealthy places. It's not emerging from downtown. It's emerging from, and this is not nice, but it's just a quote, from a small ragtag group who gathers in Allendale to learn.
It sounds like a beginning of a movie.
I think so. I think somebody with talent out there that's listening, who's a great storyteller, come on. The story is here to tell. The movie's here to make. The characters you encounter are wonderful and inspiring.
John, is that you?
Yeah. Well, I certainly did walk in one evening out of nowhere, and I showed up at the invitation of a friend who also, I didn't live in the neighborhood, neither did Brian Salvatore, but I'd run into him and he said, "Hey, you ought to go check this out, and do some research on it." I like to research, and I did, and I walked in and Kim was there. They were already doing really well, but I had started researching and posting articles because I thought maybe they missed that article, or so I started posting articles, sharing them with Kim before I'd actually met him. And then somebody said, "Hey, why don't you just come to the meeting?" And so I did. And my life it was sort of like Katrina was for me in other events where you feel like you go through a prism and come out in a new direction. So I wasn't really planning on learning about urban planning and infrastructure, but I realized that I'd been driving around in a built environment, and I didn't realize how much the things we build influence the way we live and relate to one another. And I'd been to the neighborhood before for work, and I'd done all sorts of things. I just never put it all together until I started coming to those monthly meetings, which we still hold. So, and you can attend on Zoom now if you're interested, which is how I first saw you. Was you messaged us on Facebook, and then the next thing I knew, you were sitting in on a Zoom meeting with us, and here we are with the podcast. So what a great group of people. It seems to attract great people to Allendale and to the cause of changing the way we relate to one another.
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
You bring up a good point with that. It takes us into talking about community renewal and how community renewal was a catalyst for to help with the Allendale Strong, Lupit, and Miss Rosie's story. Can you go a little bit into that, Kim? Community
Sure,
renewal.
sure. Community renewal is a unique model in the world, actually, in that it approaches the city as a whole. And what it's doing is connecting a relational foundation from which a community can grow. And it's so a network of people connected in their capacity to care begins to thicken. And like we're talking about Allendale being a place of concentrated disadvantage. Well, one of Community Renewal's three strategies is that we must move people into places of concentrated disadvantage to live and serve and to model a good family life. And so we call them community coordinators. They they start walking the neighborhood, they get to know people, they become trusted. Then Community Renewal constructs a friendship house, which has a community room and a residence for this family that's living there. And we put two of those houses and two community coordinators serving about 2,000 people, so roughly 30 blocks approximately. And first thing they do is recognize that people that are living in this place that's terribly scary, that there's some really good folks there. But the folks that are living there are isolated by fear. They don't know who else cares. And so one of the first things they do is begin to connect the residents that are living there to show that there are other caring people. And that's the first capacity growth that happens, is this connecting of each other. But since Community Renewal is working across the city with what's called a block leader strategy, Haven House is what we refer to it, we have folks all over the city who want to serve others. And so we began to connect this internal network of caring with the larger network of caring across the city. So you can imagine that one of the problems of poverty is the lack of social connections. And so what do? But we strengthen social connections internally, and then we begin to give them a network of social connections outside. So those living in wealth or more wealth that want to serve now have a way to make friends with people who are not like them. And it that's really how things grow. There's a lot of marvelous things that go on, but and Bob Griffin, a dear friend and a longtime radio television personality in Shreveport, died last year, but he loved Community Renewal. And he would come and say, what I love about them is that they don't just talk, they do. And they're giving people a hand up, not a hand out. That was his expression. And that's really what goes on. And it's so evident in Allendale when you look at the outcome of the people of Allendale. They have a strong community. They help each other. They the evidence of Allendale Strong for what is most people would say, well, I can't believe this is happening. Here we've got a group of residents, homeowners in Allendale, and they are rising in their civic leader capacity to challenge all of the wealth and power in our city around this freeway issue. But that's not enough. They've found that, well, we can control our destiny. So we're ready to form a food cooperative. And I love the vision of the food cooperatives, strengthening community through local healthy food, local creation, and community ownership. The community owns that business. And, we're in the process of formation. Anybody listening out there who would like to become an equity member in the co-op that'll help us get to reality, let us know. We need members, but that's still coming out of what we started with back in February of 2012. We're going to learn our way into a better future, and we're going to take action on what we're learning. And so, what's the next learning, doing community that Allendale will form? I don't think we're done with that.
Go a little bit deeper into this learning, doing community. Can you get a little deeper into that?
Well, I'll give you, and this comes a lot out of my experience and planning in inner city neighborhoods, searching for those ways to get started. And what I've seen is our world is so complex. And we've got, in my opinion, such a poor idea of public engagement that our people we entrust to, whether it's NLCOG or even city departments, they feel an obligation for community engagement, but they don't help citizens grow. They go to them, ask them, what do you want? Without giving them any information. And, you ask them, people are going to share. They're going to tell you what they want, but you're not giving them any understanding of the situation, the possibilities, the opportunities. You're just listening. You check that box, you go back. And then what happens is citizens tend to get mad when you set up a meeting like that, and then you leave. And the expectation of the citizens is, well, they're going to work to do what I said I wanted. Well, they don't do that because, that they go back and say, okay, we've checked the box. Now, what are we going to do? And they do what they want to do. And then there's some anger on the part of the citizens. You didn't hear us. Well, the whole process is set up wrong. And if we go in and let's call it patient learning, if you've got folks that are studying, like John and I study cities, we study looking for what's working, what can we talk about. Patient learning is a way to grow people in their thinking and their understanding. And, if we're doing that through relationships, maybe we find out what somebody's passionate about. Maybe the knowledge we're gaining could be exactly what that passion needs to find opportunity to grow. And then can we all continue to be friends while we learn together and all grow into different opportunities that add up to be greater, where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So the learning is important. And our co-op group has now connected in a national movement of food cooperatives. And we heard a professor, I think from New York City University, a female African-American who's written about co-ops. And we heard her speak, Professor Nimhard, wonderful woman, very accomplished. And she proceeded to tell us that in her research, in times throughout history, when there are marginalized citizens or people, that those people tend to come together to learn. And it's been amazing in her research. A lot of times, one of the first things they learn they can do together is a cooperative business. And that, so hearing her and our chairperson of the co-op, Rebecca Scott, I was just real excited to hear that, because she was reinforcing this idea of learning doing communities. And she had already made friends with Professor Nimhard and introduced me, and we had a wonderful conversation. And Professor Nimhard was saying, I think I need to come to Shreveport. I really need to check out Community Renewal and what y'all are doing there. The invitation still stands, but we hope that she could make it. She'd be a wonderfully inspiring voice for our community leaders to hear too. And she has a fact sheet that we share through the co-op, and this is interesting too, and it's counterintuitive that you look at business creation, and that private business has about a 10% success rate of startups making it. And that's people that are really studying, putting together expertise. And then you take co-ops, and co-ops always, I have not found an exception to this. They always start with a group of people learning who know nothing about the grocery business. And yet they have a 90% success rate over time, of sustaining the businesses that they start as a cooperative. I'm not sure what to think about that. I said it's counterintuitive, but it has to give you hope. Anybody that's listening and can say, man, okay, we come together and we learn together, and we find our opportunity together. We co-create, we co-invest, and we share. And that is a principle of capitalism, and our country was largely started a lot by cooperative business ownership. For those that might think that it's something other than capitalism, but it very much is, but it's community ownership, and it's I can't wait for us to actually get started. We actually have the idea that it ought to be a network of corner stores in all of the inner city neighborhoods to really increase the practicality and financial feasibility of doing this. So.
I would love to get deeper into the co-op, but we're going to have Rebecca and her team on. So we're going to wait for her to get deeper into the co-op. But I like the different community of stores, the different stores in the community, because I remember growing up in Allendale. I remember having, it used to be 1, 2, 3 stores, like back to back to back to back, and they all sold like different things. And if you needed, we used to say, oh, if this one don't have the honey bun, we'll go to that one. So, and it, the whole idea of community renewal is inspiring. And, it's very inspiring. And every time I hear you talk about community renewal, or when I watched the CBS special on community renewal, it reminded me of something that I always talk to the students at Georgia Tech about. And, I'm not that professor or anything like that, but we always get into kind of a back and forth about race relations for some reason. I think it's one of those acts of black man type things.
Yeah.
So, but I always talk to them about empathy, sympathy, and compassion. Empathy is when, you feel and try to understand what a person goes through, all right? And sympathy is when you feel sorry for that person. And compassion is when you want to take the pain away from them, right? You want to help them out. And I always say that if you want to help someone out, don't help them with sympathy. Bring in empathy.
Yeah.
because now your compassion will be totally different.
I've got something to add to that to reinforce it. And I love this about community renewal too, is that volunteers, which we have like 2,000 volunteers a year contributing almost 40,000 hours, but they go through an orientation. And you need a mindset shift when you start crossing these lines of difference. And so the orientation is really about change your view of poverty. Don't look at poverty materialistically. Look at it relationally. And it's an equalizer, because people living in the wealthy neighborhoods have relational poverty just like anybody else in the city. And so it's quite a mental adjustment if you can get into that when you're crossing these lines of difference, because if you're materially wealthy, you really think that people in poverty lack your material wealth, and that's what they should have. That's not necessarily true. In fact, it's not true. I won't say necessarily, because there's a lot more wealth of relationships sometimes in lack of material wealth. And so it's an interesting dynamic, but I just admire our community outreach people who are helping people change that perspective of relationships in the city.
Yeah, we got to introduce you to Sharpell and Emmett Welch, who live in the Friendship House and direct the programs there on Clay Street, where I first met everybody, was in that particular Friendship House. And they were sort of the instigators of the piece that we ran on CBS Sunday Morning, for those who've seen that before. But for me, I realized not too long ago that, we all grew up with the first chapter of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and then God came and dwelt among us. God became incarnate and came and dwelt among us. But I heard the sort of easier going translation that God became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. And I think that kind of describes Community Renewal International, that flesh and blood moves into the neighborhood and begins to act as one would expect God to act when they're at their best. It's really amazing to see what all gets done. So Emmett will call me up, John, how you doing? I'm like, okay. He's about to ask me for something, but it's good. He's like, I need help with the barbecue. We're doing a barbecue for 300 people. And could you come over and sort of man the barbecue pit? And, it's just great because they set these really unbelievably fun events that pulls the whole neighborhood together, and they feed the multitudes. There might be 300 or 400 people there that get fed with the barbecue and jumpy houses, all these things that wouldn't be going on there without God moving into the neighborhood in some form.
Our director of Haven House, the Block Leader Program, one of the things they do is encourage people to have block parties. And he has an expression, it may have come from our founder, Mac, that why have a meeting when you can have a party?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and those are fun parties. So, but yeah, I kind of look forward to the next call, Emmett. If you're watching, call me and let's have a party. They're a lot of fun over there.
I would always rather have a party than a meeting.
Kids running around a jumpy house and playing basketball with the kids. It's just a lot of fun, and also really good barbecues. So wait to do it again in the spring, hopefully soon.
Oh yeah, definitely. Now, Kim, let's talk about this business boulevard that can you go a little bit deeper into the business boulevard for us?
Sure. One of the key and it's now becoming a policy in some state. I think it may be a transportation policy in Georgia or Alabama one, is that we need to separate local and through traffic. As we continue to learn about the mistake of cutting up cities with freeways, that's a key point of learning, is that one of the ways that we have been creating congestion is combining local and through traffic. And that makes sense if you think about it. And then if you think about it from a business standpoint, that if we combine local and through traffic in a mode of trying to speed up traffic, we create congestion. And that congestion reduces business activity. And so this new policy direction is let's stop digging that hole. Let's start figuring out how we can separate local and through traffic. And so when you start looking at through traffic, they don't want to stop in your city. That's what they're saying. It's through traffic. So why would we want to mix up traffic trying to go through our city with traffic within our city trying to support and engage local business? So if you think about that, so we need through traffic to go fast. We need local traffic to go slow. And so you start looking at that from a design standpoint and you say, okay, the idea of taking traffic around our city that doesn't want to stop makes sense. But when it comes to traffic within our city, what that would tell us is that we need to slow traffic down within our city. That's one of the keys to correcting the mistake of spreading out so much and building infrastructure we can't afford. So how could we do that? How could we slow traffic down? And so the boulevard becomes a thought or a design idea. And it's a growing movement. I say it's no longer a movement, it's becoming a tidal wave that taking down freeways, which is largely, one of the incentives to do it is that they're reaching end of life. They last maybe 50 years, sometimes as little as 30 years. And then the cost of them is so huge. And I was talking with someone today who it feels that maybe you're criticizing freeways and said, no, that's not it at all. You need to recognize there are two aspects to freeways. There are the interstates that go between cities that cost between $5 and $15 or $20 million a mile. Those are very, very productive as a return to get a return on investment. But when you get to the urban freeways that are cutting up cities, those can run $300 to $500 million a mile. And what we're learning is that they do harm. And so we need to for those listening to understand there's two aspects to this these interstates, and that we are for the good, productive aspect of going between cities. It's reasonable cost and a great return, but we are not getting a return for the investment in intercity cut through freeways. They are creating harm. And that's what we've learned. So the boulevard, slow traffic down. Let's use our creativity in a boulevard too. If the boulevard gives us a chance to engage pedestrians, bicyclers, public transportation, and those things that where the road can connect to the life of the city. The interstate does not connect to the life of the city. They become, in some places, they're known as the Berlin Wall, the Great Divide, the destroyer of neighborhoods. There's a lot of negatives that really express the reality of those freeways. So the boulevard can be something wonderful that makes living next to it a beautiful experience. Right now, the freeways are producing toxicity zones on either side of them as far as 1,500 feet away, maybe farther. I look at I-49 south of I-20 in the city, and it divided the city, no doubt about it. But even some of the wealthiest neighborhoods that are right next to that freeway are in the toxicity zone. Not to mention what's been done to Cedar Grove neighborhood to just totally divide it and create.
Yeah, Kim, and there's 3 or 4 schools, 2 private schools, 1 public school, another public school closed, but yeah, they had 4 schools within that toxicity
Right.
zone, and 3 of them are still there. It's crazy because it creates all kind of problems for children.
So the Boulevard represents it's like this is a new opportunity. We might want to get ready for taking I-49 south of I-20 down in the future. And this boulevard that would run through Allendale and connect to North Market and reinvest North Market with a new imagination for the future of what it could become. Once at one time, Agers had 25% of all the manufacturing jobs in Shreveport. Very locally creative manufacturers. Some of them still exist, but we can regenerate that, and we need to regenerate it. We can't just keep hollowing out our city growing out. It's killing us. We're several $1 billion of deficit on infrastructure maintenance. Our water bill, sewer bills are now growing to the point that even the wealthiest people in the city are complaining about how much it costs. So the Boulevard represents a new way of thinking about the future. And we can look to the past for what great boulevards had done for cities. Among those are Claiborne Avenue in New Orleans, that was the heart and soul of Treme neighborhood. And oak line trees, great place, all kind of community, strong community. In fact, the leader of Allendale Strong, Dorothy Wiley, lived there. And she has seen what happens when you build an interstate. You cut down all those oak trees, you build an elevated roadway, and then the neighborhood dies. And that's happened over and over again. And it's time to just say, boy, do we need a new mind. And that's really what we're doing in Allendale Strong. We're all working to get a new mind about this. And we're anxious as a group really to be heard and engage our community's imagination in what could be, rather than trying to perpetuate what was the experiment that just has done harm, which is these cut through freeways. So it's,
Kim, I saw an article, I hadn't shared it with you, but the French never built an elevated highway over the Champs-Élysées, and it's slipped into some decline, they were saying. So they're going to spend 2 billion euros. I'm not sure what Roosevelt could probably convert that for me. He's been around the world, but they're going to spend a lot of money to enhance it, to bring it back to life. But they've never said, oh, you know what, this is in decline, let's build a highway over the Champs-Élysées. And it's maybe one of the greatest examples of a business boulevard, is what it really is. And it's a fantastic. It's amazing how important a business boulevard is to a city, but the tendency to go modern is a mistake. It's a great idea from olden days that we should bring back.
Yeah, well, pedestrians are really the key to retail, not cars.
Right.
And so that's interesting. There's one city in the world who resisted the cut through freeway experiment, and that's Vancouver, British Columbia. And as a result, they have one of the most, for a city of millions of people, they have one of the most compact footprints and a very high quality of life. They've got poverty, sure, but it was Portland area was another one in our country that was looking north, wondering, well, why are we declining? And Seattle too, while Vancouver is thriving. And they began to look at their policies of growth, and they said, well, we've made some mistakes. We've got to change the way we grow. And so they created the growth boundary and the regional transportation system, building centers of commercial activity at transit stops, and really set some examples for the rest of the country about a new direction. Not that they haven't had their issues with gentrification, but I've always thought that was interesting that Vancouver resisted the cutting up cities with freeways. And
well, Joe Minicozy, of Urban 3 in North Carolina, came to speak here, and he said, somebody asked him during the Q&A, so where's a city that gets it right? And he thought for a second, and he said, any city in Canada. And everybody chuckled. And then he said, look, if you go to a border city, like for instance, Niagara Falls, the American side's trash, mess, in decay and decline. But just across the Niagara, everything's great. And he said, you know why? And oh, why? Well, it's because Canadians don't mind living closer together, which is more efficient. So you have more money to do everything well, instead of trying to do a little bit of something spread out over a sprawling, vast landscape of infrastructure that you can't afford to keep up. It's really amazing. And yet we live in America, and many of us never get very far outside of America, and you don't get a chance to see how well a city can be run if you're willing to change your idea about how to run a city.
And that kind of segue us right into the meeting that you attended last night, John.
Oh yeah, it was Friday. I wish it had been Friday morning. And I was thinking, I don't see the point in going, but it's been my habit pre-COVID to go to the meetings instead of watch it at home online, and I'm so glad I did. Had the opportunity to speak for 3 minutes during public comments. I'm used to them listening politely and then moving on with their business. And one of my favorite state senators to hate, because he wants to build a highway through Allendale, but he doesn't live in Allendale. The best reason Senator Peacock gave on the radio was because he grew up watching them build I-20, and he'd like his kids to grow up watching them build I-49 through the city. And I was like, come on, really? But all you can do is shout at the radio. So anyway, I got up to speak before they addressed the business of I-49, and also his favorite subject, which is the bridge across the Red River here called Jimmy Davis Bridge. And I figured these guys don't seem like they follow urban planning, especially new ideas, real closely. So I thought I'd read to them a comment that Mayor Pete Buttigieg, now Secretary of Transportation designate Pete Buttigieg. He said this upon accepting the Biden nomination to serve in the cabinet. He said, Black and brown neighborhoods have been disproportionately divided by highway projects or left isolated by the lack of adequate transit and transportation resources. In the Biden administration, we will make righting these wrongs an imperative. And then I went on to paraphrase what he said later, which is basically that administration's not going to be building any more inner city connectors. In fact, they're going to be about removing them and righting those wrongs of dividing neighborhoods and building those awful walls which create the decay in urban cities. So all the white guys in there were, which it used to be an almost all white male, they stopped. I could see the wheels turning out. I think it was news to them. I don't think they'd considered it before. And now we have, which is huge, I think 4 African Americans that serve on that COG board, and they set up and heard Mayor Pete, and I don't know how well studied they are on best modern practices in the 21st century for urban planning, but I had their attention for once, so I took it and ran with it, and I told them about, especially because there were new people, black and white there, I told them about our history in a nutshell, and that we've been studying the issue for 9 years, and we had formed a 501c3 a couple of years ago when we began raising some money, and all in expectation of this year coming up where we're going to maybe get the final record of decision out of Washington, D.C. and Baton Rouge, February of 22 is the goal. Said, of course, and then we can start building it, and it could be finished as early as 2040 from what the leaders are saying we can drive on in the year 2040. And I went on to tell them, just like our friends at the Committee 100 who want to build it through our neighborhood, we don't want to build it, and they're spending $100,000 on a very vigorous public information campaign to convince everybody that the highway is going to be good for them. I can't wait to see what they come up with. And we're also raising money for a public information campaign to speak truth to power and tell people, hey, we got a better idea. We think you'll like it better, and it'll be cheaper to do and be better for business. And we could drive on it sooner than 2039, 2040. So it was pretty exciting to get to share that news and have their attention focused on us for 3 minutes. And the good senator from Shreveport, state senator, was sitting there, and he seemed glum, I would say, as I walked by him. He wasn't really friendly to me. And I tried to be as nice to him as I could. I offered to hold the door for him. Kim, I don't know if I told you, he refused to walk through the front door unless I went through it first. And he just told me, I was like, come on, I'm just holding the door for you. He's like, I'm not going to do it. And so he steered a wide berth around me, because I guess he knows that I disagree that watching a highway, your privileged kids get to watch a highway be built in the city, isn't such a good reason to build a highway through a city. And there must be some cognitive dissonance going on with those guys a little bit, as they've been hearing about us for a few years. And that was a lot of fun. So they went on to discuss the bridge, which is Senator Peacock's pet project, because he stopped the bridge, was set to go. It was shovel ready, and they were ready to start repairing it way past its due date to be repaired. And he stopped it, pulled $100 million set for it, and convinced his colleagues to move that into the Allendale I-49 fund. And I-49 won't be shovel ready for some years to come, even if they got a record of decision next year. So he was confident that the money would, as he said, come down from the federal government. We'll just pull down some more money. Never came, so now they have to go back and start studying that project over again. So it's far from shovel ready, according to the report. And as is I-49, but if we get a record of decision, I believe that record of decision could be in our favor to build around Allendale with the loop. But the other great thing was, the gentleman got up to speak. He's from a company that contracts to help COGS, councils of government, plan 5 years forward. And he was speaking along, and he was blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And I was listening to him. It sounded great. I really liked the guy. I've heard him speak before. But all of a sudden he said, and you, sir, if you'll wait around after the meeting, I'll get you a card. And I was like, who's he talking to? looking behind me, and then I realized he was talking to me. It was like, you, sir. But I said, okay, because we've been wanting a business boulevard for a long time, and all we get from these guys is that's not in the scope of the project, and we can't put it in the scope of the project. He says, send me an email and we'll get right with you and set up a meeting where you guys can all be on Zoom and we can listen to what you want and try to get it for you. So that was some of the best, one of the best long meetings I've ever been to. Without me knowing it, it turned out to be really a fruitful and positive experience. So hopefully I passed that card on to Kim before I lost it. And so hopefully Kim's already contacted the guy and got at that meeting in process, which will be great. Just to be heard by somebody that works for the government, even if it's a contractor. But yeah, I think we're in for a great year, and you're part of it. Roosevelt, you joined at the right time.
I know, right? We're getting the word out at the right time. I believe.
Yeah, and we needed a little fresh energy, because it's been a long struggle, and so we're glad to have new people join us, and we were certainly lucky you found us anyway. How did you find us?
Man, I actually have been following Friends of Allendale Strong for a little while. I followed Lupit, and I told the story about how my family member, we'll call him, is one of the big advocates for I-49 in the city connector. So like I said, I started kind of researching. I'm a research person myself. Kind of started researching the whole thing when the thing happened here in Georgia when they got rid of the governor for even suggesting that they build a loop. I mean, or a highway or interstate connection through North Georgia. So that kind of got my wheels turning. And what I would just say this, what truly got me into it was watching one of my favorite channels, once again, GPB. And if you have a chance, anybody that's watching this, if you have a chance to donate to your local public radio station or public television station, do it. I do it every year. But I was watching GPB, and they had they were talking about great architecture and things like that. And one of the things was they talked about how they built interstates through African American and brown neighborhoods around the time when they were just building interstates. And they talked about how these highways that we used to use, and how these highways had built these nice cities, and how when they built the interstates, they didn't build them through the same place they had these highways, these state and U.S. highways that they used to have for the interstates. And they just talked about the degradation of these neighborhoods after that, and the degradation of these cities. And they showed the correlation between something that, like I think Kim, you brought this up, a drive-through or a through interstate versus something that is on the ground, right? Red light, green light, stop. And how the differences was so vast, and that right there, watching that kind of just got my wheels turning once again. And I said, something, I think I need to start getting involved with this, because I had talked about it. I had followed you guys for a long time and did research. So it was finally about that time for me to make the phone call, or hit you up on Facebook.
Yeah. Glad you did.
Absolutely.
I'm happy I did also. Well, thank you guys for coming. We're meeting today. This was a wonderful talk. Thank you, Kim, for coming and talking to me and John. Like I said, we're going to have you on again. this is not the last time. So, and I think you have the best background, one of the best backgrounds out of a lot of people. I like John's background, but your background is just so symmetrically put together, right? I just had to say that.
Yeah, my hat's off to him. I realized I could have gotten a college degree in about 6 or 7 years on this subject. I've done a lot of reading for about 5 years to catch up, and I've done some interviews with people that are experts in it. So I almost sound like I know what I'm talking about, but
I know, right?
I know what I'm talking about. Yeah. But
John does know what he's talking. He's become. I've just loved John engaging Allendale Strong, and then becoming recognized as a local expert on this subject. He's done that, and that it's just amazing. And I hope for some future sessions is I'm going to call it the next phase, in that having some more detailed conversations about what comes next. If we get the Boulevard, then how do the citizens of Allendale lead and learn and lead into the renewal of the neighborhood? I think that's a worthy conversation, and it's one of talking about what might be there for us to do. And if we get some pushback, so be it. But it's a conversation we need to have, and I believe you're the one to help us have it.
Hey, and you know something? I have and I go ahead and say it now, one of the things that I want to talk about with K Camp is talking about financial literacy in Allendale and Shreveport as a whole, right? And the lack of financial literacy in America. But that is another topic for another day. Thank you guys for coming and talk. Thank you, Kim, for coming to talk with us today. Thank you, John, once again for hanging out.
It's always fun.
And I want to tell everybody that's watching, please subscribe, please like on YouTube, and also go and check out Allendale Strong Facebook page. You will see the links below the video, and you will see some links also to our Facebook page, Twitter, and Instagram. So like and subscribe, help us out, and also donate. Please donate to the cause. Check us out on Facebook, and where you will find a donation page, and check out the videos and everything else on Facebook. If you want to join us in the meetings, please send us a DM through Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, and we will get the information out to you guys. You guys have a blessed and wonderful day.